This is the Aeon Byte interview. And with us, we have the pleasure of being joined by Saul Luckman to discuss his novel, which I really enjoyed, Kali the Destroyer. Saul, thank you very much for coming on Aeon Byte.
Thanks for having me, Miguel, and thanks for reading my book.
Oh, it was great. I started it and it just took me down the proverbial rabbit hole. I enjoyed it. I was engaged with the characters, with the story. Everything was good. All the reveals were just an added bonus, but good stuff. And with us, we have the Moondog Vance. Vance, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm just fine. Looking forward to this because how more basic can you get besides Archons? You know, we could almost call ourselves Archon Byte, right?
Yeah.
I like
So, yeah, here we go with Raiders of the Lost Archon.
Well, they are very popular. I think I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about how the Demiurge and the Archons are not the most important part of Gnosticism, but they are kind of the most fascinating part. And then I was thinking, well, you can't have Star Wars without Darth Vader. You can't have the
Right.
light without the shadow. So,
Yep.
and I think all of us, we all like the dark side, but we also are very intrigued about our own shadow and what is unconscious. So I think that's what, but Sophia is also very popular. So Saul, tell us, when did you get interested in sort of these Gnostic topics?
Gosh, that's a great question. I'm trying to remember what year it was. I'm going to say it was in the 2013 range. I was I don't remember how I came across his work, but I got into John Lash, read Not in His Image, listened to some of his other materials, and then that led to this and that, and I began learning from some other sources. There was an astrologer named Laura Walker who was very interested in the topic, and she ended up being a really wonderful resource and help to me when I released my last novel, which is called Snooze, A Story of Awakening, which is not a Gnostic novel, but it has a lot of consciousness and other related concepts. And also dealing with sort of the shadow side and that kind of thing, parallel realities. What is questioning what's giving rise to this experience, or whatever we want to call this realm. So I learned a lot from Laura and just a lot of people, really. I mean, I've listened to your stuff. I mean, I've been kind of bouncing around for a while. There's a massive disagreement about so many of the basic concepts that people are calling Gnosticism.
Right.
It's kind of hard to corral it all, and I don't claim to know really what's going on, but I have ideas, and I like to treat reality kind of artistically from a writer's perspective. I can address it, I can make stories about it, I can narrativize it without having to know every single thing.
Yeah, well said, and I would agree. I mean, you could just take the Gnostic aesthetic and it will take you into a world of dark and light experiences, transcendence, bliss, all that. We don't have to worry too much about the details down here in the ground. All will be revealed in our next incarnation, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do. I mean, lately I've really been into the getting into the idea of simulation theory and the idea of the demiurge being a kind of AI system within which we operate, and instead of having reincarnations, where we have more like reboots or life simulations or something like that. So that's another spin on it that is not, strangely, it's not actually incompatible with a lot of what I learned from older concepts about Gnosticism.
No, it is. I mean, they were talking simulation theory 2000 years ago when nobody else was really talking about that, at least not in the West. So they were pioneers, and it seems to have just, you might say, caught up with the world. But, and you find yourself leaning towards the John Lash or Sophianic Gnosticism. Maybe you can explain to the audience about what it is, a little recap.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one of the many books people might be interested in. It's I mean, it's a kind of it's one of those books I think you have to come to terms with one way or another if you're studying this material. he's pretty much of a force in many ways, intellectually, and he's done a tremendous amount of research, and you don't have to agree with him, but you have, like I said, you sort of have to acknowledge that this elephant is in the room. And his main thesis is a kind of literal reading of the planet as the goddess that fell from the pleroma into the canoma. In so doing, she created the archons, kind of like our half brothers and sisters, and then came down into this area and became the planet, and then essentially fell asleep. And we've been living kind of within her dream ever since. Some people, I know that years ago, he was talking about a kind of awakening period that she was in, and I don't know if, where he is with that now. Is she fully awake or anything like that? I have no idea, but that was kind of where I parted ways with Lash's material, and I haven't really checked in several years.
Yeah, there's something about that book that sounds so truthful. There's a feel about it, and again, it's so cool how Sophia is this sort of I don't know what you call it. She's basically a scientist who's working on the anthropos, and then she moves away from the pleroma, and like you said, she comes to our galaxy and becomes the planet, our planet, and of course the other planets are the archons and all that. And he's got this great idea too, where the archons and the demiurge are both mind parasites, and they are these sort of galactic beings. So, and it works very well because, again, today is with Paul Levy's Wetiko and other researchers, it seems the idea of an archon as a mind virus just makes perfect sense, especially when you look at how insane people are acting today, right? It's like there's no other explanation sometimes.
I would agree with that, or at least, we have to look outside some of the prevailing materialistic paradigms. I know, like Jason Bashir's, who's doing a lot of work on simulation theory, his explanation for why things are so crazy is that we're approaching the end of the simulation, and the simulation no longer needs to maintain any kind of narrative cohesion because we're so close to the end. So it's no longer trying to cover up its tracks so that we, won't discover kind of how to predict the simulation or what's happening. It's actually letting it rip, as it were, as we move into the final decades of the simulation.
No, that makes sense. I mean, there's almost a feel that we're in this sort of everything seems to be old, everything seems to be rehash. I put out a show yesterday, and I put a clip from the infamous or famous clip from Network by Peter Finch. I'm as mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore. And he's listing all the stuff that people are really scared about 40 years ago. And of course, and he's talking Russians, inflation, crime. And you're wondering, man, this is such a recycled topic. I mean, you go, what's wrong with the lizard people? Don't they have a better imagination? It's just the same old thing, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, my take on that, whether you want to look at this as simulation or ET or whatever we're talking about, is that you're really talking about a system that is intelligent. It is an AI of some kind, or is utilizing an AI. That's how, one way or the other. But the AI itself, it can't read our minds. It's not creative like the Anthropos, like the luminous child. It cannot actually create. It can only maintain its programming. So that's why, in my estimation, that it would be recycling the same things over and over again, because it really recycles everything. It recycles calendrics, cataclysmic cycles. All of these things are part of the programming that its mandate is to maintain.